The NFL draft has come and gone, meaning we finally have the landing spots for the prospects that we have talking nonstop about for the better part of the last 3 months. So what better time to get those rookie ranks ready for your dynasty rookie drafts and also take a moment to wonder just where will these guys wind up in ADP by the time September comes along. So jam-packed show here today on the Fantasy Life Show. And as always, we appreciate you tuning in. And by we, I mean myself, Ian Hartitz, and the one, the only, the great Dwain, the Rock McFarland. Mr. Dwain, how's it going?
I'm good, Ian. Like, you always build me up with that. You know, the one, the only, director of analytics, the Rock, you know, and then I feel like I have to really deliver those. So I see what you're doing. You're like making sure like I'm on my A+ game, because if I suck after that, it just looks really bad. So I appreciate you though. I like the hype intro. It's like walk-up music in baseball.
So just, again, Dwain, like politely, respectfully, try not to suck, okay, as we go through this. So with all that in mind, guys, again, going through some of the different positions, the bigger names, and again, giving you guys where we have them ranked ahead of those rookie drafts, and then just taking a moment to, again, guess those ADPs by the time September rolls around. Hopefully we find some value in the meantime. So with that, Dwain, let's get right into it with Mr. 101 himself, now Tennessee Titans quarterback Cam Ward. He is coming in terms of redraft land, certainly bottom of the barrel, but Dwain really does, have a clear-cut case as the overall QB1 in rookie drafts. However, where does he fall for you from an overall basis and when we're looking at Superflex?
Yeah, when you're looking overall, like right now, I think pretty much a consensus across the board. We're all looking at a guy that, well, actually, this is crazy. Every one of us has him QB 28. You, me, Waz, well, and then Friedman has him 26. So that makes him a low-end option, right, in a Superflex league. But I will say this, Ian, like I was thinking about this. I'm going to get your thoughts. Like I could see a scenario where I'm like, okay, I could take Cam Ward, the first pick in the draft, scrambles for over 20 yards per game, threw for over 300 yards per game in the last 2 seasons of his collegiate career. I think I could take him over Bryce Young. As much as Bryce Young improved at the end of last year, it wasn't like he suddenly went nuclear and was throwing for 300 yards per game. It was mostly his touchdowns versus his interceptions. Now, he was doing some more scrambling, but my guess is Cam Ward's probably going to run more than Bryce Young still. Then you run into Sam Darnold. Had a great year last year, but in a perfect environment with Kevin O'Connell. We like the weapons there, but we also think there's some duplication between Cooper Kupp, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And then, okay, great, MVS stretching out the field. Guys, how many years do we have to talk about MVS stretching out the field? Like he's getting his steps in out there. So I could see a scenario, though, where if you wanted to take the upside, I do feel like Cam Ward at least has some chance in to have a run out more similar to what CJ Stroud had. Now, not quite the passing numbers as Stroud, but because of what he can do as a rusher, and then maybe be somewhere a little bit below where Stroud was as a passer. Like, would it surprise you if Cam Ward outscored Michael Penix, who had his own struggles at the end of last year? Anthony Richardson's a guy that's going higher than him right now. We don't even know how many games he's going to play. Matthew Stafford, we like, but a stationary quarterback. I like the add of Devontae Adams. But my point being here is, like, I could see a case where if I was looking at the glass half full, I could potentially think about Cam Ward as high as like QB 20 to like 18. Like I wouldn't take him over Trevor Lawrence, wouldn't take him over Tua. I'm not taking him over Stroud, not taking him over Dak. So like you definitely get into a range where it's like, okay, I'm not doing Cam Ward over those guys. But I feel like that other list that I gave you, like given that he will run the ball a little bit, I am wondering, like, do we have him too low?
It'd be so much easier to get behind it, Dwain, if we weren't looking at maybe the worst group of pass catchers in the league. Again, every single NFL team, like Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, like the Browns are another really bad one, but you can still talk yourself into guys being decent. In Tennessee right now, we're talking about Calvin Ridley, who I like more than most, but most people I think would consider him basically a wide receiver 2, who you don't really want as your wide receiver 1. Then we have Van Jefferson and Tyler Lockett in the year 2025, filling out this 3 wide receiver set. So I hear you in terms of the rushing being enough to maybe get him to that CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert, maybe best case scenario, Bo Nix line in Fantasyland. But again, it really is that lack of a supporting cast that makes me just
come on, Ian. They signed Restrepo as an undrafted free agent. Like, does that not change the whole equation?
Mr. 4-8,
the number Mr. 1 target in college. Yeah.
The U's all-time leading
times.
receiver. I got to be a little bit more respectful there. Duke Johnson, the rusher, in case you guys all forgot, of course. But okay, all that said, Dwayne, I do see what you're saying in terms of when we do get into more tier-based things. Like it's going to be QB 20 to QB 28, not too different. So again, you said it initially. Right now, we have him as our QB 28. By the time September comes along, where do you think that ADP will settle?
I don't think it's going to move much, to be honest. I think it might climb a couple of spots. Like I could see it getting over Bryce. I feel like Penix, honestly, is a tad steamed right now, even though it's like he's not ranked super high. He's QB 23. I mean, if you really go back and look at what Penix did, yeah, there were some big throws, but there was also like not a lot of overall fantasy production. And so I think there's major questions there. So I think he could climb a couple of spots, but I don't think it's going to be anything drastic because I think there's definitely a barrier where you're not going to get past names like Trevor Lawrence to CJ Stroud. So I would say the max that he would move up would maybe be to like QB 20. Okay. And like that would probably be off of like some crazy too great first preseason games where we watch a quarter and get too excited about the football we just saw play out against a vanilla defense. But I could see that kind of scenario. And like if one of those plays is like a 15-yard scramble for a touchdown, kind of like last year with Drake May, he ran the inside zone like RPO and pulled it, and he ran the touchdown in himself. Like I think that moved Drake May up like 2 spots in draft. So I think there's a path. I don't think he's going to move up very high, but I could see a situation where preseason games get people a little hype and he moves up 4 or 5 spots.
Right now over Underdog, where the sickest of the sick drafters are continuing to get after it in those best ball streets. He is the QB 23. So Dwayne thinking it's going to be around there, maybe a little bit higher. I actually could see him falling just a spot or two. I'm going to go with QB 25 on the record. If we do find out Anthony Richardson is locked in as the week 1 starter, he'd be someone we'd certainly be drafting earlier. And I just think guys like Matthew Stafford, Bryce Young, even Geno Smith and Sam Darnold, I hear you, Dwayne, in terms of Cam Ward versus them not being all that different. Again, same tier. But all those guys do have kind of teammate skill position players that will be going in the earlier rounds of drafts. So I am wondering if just to try to get those stacks, we do see them separate just a little bit ahead of Cam Ward. So my QB 25, I'm thinking an ADP by the time September comes along. Not going to be someone we're overly concerned about in one QB formats. Similar sentiment, Dwayne, is true for the other first round QB, Mr. Jaxson Dart for the New York Football Giants. He's someone that I have as my QB 32 entering the season because, yeah, guess what? You cannot score fantasy points if you're not actually starting and on the football field. And we have heard from Brian Dable himself that this is still Russell Wilson's job to lose. The question, Dwayne, is how long that lasts, because we have this tricky kind of spot that the Giants head coach and GM find themselves in, where they need to win enough games to, keep their jobs and everything. But on the other side of things, if the ship starts to sink, the only other way Daboll's going to be able to save his job is to show, hey, look, I have this Jaxson Dart kid, and he can help give us a brighter future. So thoughts on Dart, because again, man, if you had to just put him in, if we knew he was starting 17 games, same thing with Cam Ward, we could argue Dart should be ranked higher because of what he brings to the table on the ground.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Like in a dynasty league, you're obviously taking Cam Ward first. He's got the number one overall pick draft capital, meaning long runway. Going to get multiple seasons to fail, right? And so you get to bank those starts. But as far as pure upside, I do agree with you here on Jaxson Dart. If we're talking about this year, you're not really drafting him right now in best ball or in redraft because you just don't know when's he going to get on the field. But he could become like a huge waiver wire addition, Ian, late in the season, because if you look at him, he averaged 47 rushing yards per game over his final 2 collegiate seasons. That excludes sacks all the way. So annoying that sacks count towards the rushing yards when you go look at the college stuff. I have to remind my ear every year when I go to start the research, I'm like, man, these numbers are terrible. I'm like, oh, because the sacks are in there. So once you remove those sacks, like this is a guy that was very productive on the ground. He's kind of selective, but he knows when to take his shots. He's a good scrambler, knows when he sees the defender's backs turn, whenever he can go ahead and take off and get that 15 yards. So I like a lot what Dart has here. And just to kind of give people like a quick example of how this works out. So we've been working on these floor and ceiling projection models in the back end over at Fantasy Life, because it's going to help fuel some new tools that we're working on. You'll also see me. I'm starting to write about these things in the articles. I'll have a new article coming out tomorrow evaluating all the rookies, looking at their median, floor, and ceiling projections that'll be using this new solution that we have. But just to real quickly talk about what it looks like for quarterback. So let's take, for example, you think that you have this elite pocket passer quarterback. You think they're going to average 260 yards per game, 2 passing touchdowns per game, 5 rushing yards per game. So a little more of the statue variety, but 0.05 rushing touchdowns per game. The floor comes out to 15.6 and the ceiling is 21.9. That's essentially a Joe Burrow profile, which is very hard to find, guys. We just don't get them. Every year we have some type of quarterback spike into that range, like Baker was a good example last year. Now he also did some things with his legs that helped out. But if you look at the average to below average dual threat quarterback, and so what I mean by that, guys that can run somewhere between 40 and 50 yards per game, but we're only expecting like 215, 220 yards passing. So like Jalen Hurts is a great example of this. If you look at that particular profile, so we give him 225 yards per game, 1.25 passing touchdowns per game, way lower than the 2 that we just gave to a profile like Burrow, but the rushing yards per game goes from 5 to 25. The rushing touchdowns may not sound like a lot, goes from 0.05 to game to 0.15. Suddenly, the floor is still lower than the Burrow player, 13.5 versus 15.6. But listen to this ceiling, Ian, 21.2. for this Jaxson Dart type profile, only 0.7 points below a guy like Joe Burrow. So it's just the facts. It's the way that the math works. It's the way variance works. It's the way all the data for fantasy works. So once we do get Jaxson Dart under center, I do believe that he is a player that we are going to want to prioritize on waiver wires this year. And I will say in your dynasty drafts, Ian, like honestly, interested to see where you've got him, because even in single QB leagues, I'm kind of wondering if I've got him too low. Because right now, so I wrote up my article. Folks can find it on fantasylife.com. I actually did my rookie rankings update. You've seen the supermodel, guys, where I do it position by position. I bring it all together here. So I'm tiering all the players together, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks. And whenever I got to Jaxson Dart, I honestly was struggling a little bit because I put him at 18. Now, this is a single quarterback league. But I thought, like I could see myself actually pushing this guy like as high as like 15 in the range of a Caleb Johnson, Trey Harris. I mean, let's be honest. He's a first round quarterback with rushing upside. I'm kind of worried I have him too low. What do you think?
I think you're spot on. I mean, especially in Superflex, man, you should not be really letting this guy get out of round 1 because you can never have enough quarterbacks.
Yeah, for sure. It's
found out when you are able to start too. But even in round 1, man, once you start getting to again, okay, a round 1 quarterback who can move versus legit round 3 running backs and wide receivers, I say you go ahead and just take the elite onesie potential there with Mr. Dart. And I know Dable's been running around saying, oh, this could be, my new Josh Allen stuff in New York. Let's put that aside. Okay, Josh Allen is bigger, faster, stronger, all that, compared to Dart. But hey, could Dart at least be the good version of Daniel Jones for an extended period of time? Hey, we saw it, guys. 2022, no Malik Neighbors, and Daniel Jones was actually the QB 10 in fantasy points per game. That happened. So again, even if we're not going to get those world beater Josh Allen ceiling, as Dwain has alluded to, again, with the rushing just overall floor we have here, that still can be, an average to bad NFL quarterback like Daniel Jones and still be very good in fantasy land. So as things stand right now, Dwain, just the QB 29 and drafts over underdog. I think this could, again, for this year, even fall a little bit more. QB 31, I could see guys like Aaron Rodgers or the Saints quarterback once that gets figured out, just jumping over a guy who, again, is unfortunately going to be a backup. But yeah, man, again, if you are in a position in Dynasty where you don't have this glaring RB wide receiver need, go get him in round 2.
Yeah, I think the question for redraft here, right, or for best ball, though, is if we found out like Jaxson Dart's having a great training camp, just surpasses Russell Wilson and Jameis, and is named the starting quarterback for week 1 of the Giants. And let's say we find that out a couple of weeks before the season when everybody's fantasy drafts are happening in that 2-week window. How high do you think Jaxson Dart then moves if we know he's the starter week 1?
I still don't think he's breaking through that, Stroud T-Law tier you mentioned. Now, could he potentially outperform them just by running around a lot? I could see it, but I would put him right there around QB 21, 22 with Bryce Young and McCarthy.
Yeah, I would put him above McCarthy as well. Sorry, Thor. I would put him above Bryce Young. I would put him above McCarthy. But I do think once you get to T-Law, like that's kind of the spot where I stop, because T-Law also has this potential profile, and it hasn't always worked out, where he could run for 350 yards in a year. And if he suddenly spikes, now you get Travis Hunter to go with Brian Thomas Jr. as a passer. I think we feel a little bit better, right, about T-Law ceiling as a passer, even though it hasn't happened yet, versus a year 1 Jaxson Dart.
Talked about some quarterbacks who, again, might not have the biggest immediate impact in 2025 because life is tough under center for these rookies. However, the opposite tends to be true with these running backs who often are able to put forward big time production even in their first year in the league. So let's kick things off, Dwain, with the 6th overall pick of the draft himself, Mr. Ashton Jeanty, now the Raiders, aka Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly's undisputed workhorse RB1. So right now, guess what, guys? Go to any website in the world and you're going to see him as the 101 in rookie dynasty drafts, and for good reason, Dwain. However, I'm not saying you owe me an apology, but one of us has him ranked higher than the other one, and
I knew this was coming.
On the table and yelled at me. So, okay, RB4, what's going on?
I know. I need to move it because I did say on the show that I would have Ashton Jeanty over Jahmyr Gibbs as my running back 3, and Ian actually did it. So I feel like I owe you some sort of a bet. We didn't make a bet, but I would be willing to do something here if you came up with something that I'm agreeable to. Obviously, I'm not like shaving my head or anything, but if we did look at Jeanty, I'm with you. I should have him at 3. Obviously, like you said, for a rookie running back, he is number 1. So I'm working on an article just to kind of give people a feel here. I'm working on an article for tomorrow right now, Ian, and I mentioned it a second ago, where I'm really looking at the median and then the ceiling and the floor. And the way the model works is this. There are assumptions. We need to get the median projection somewhat right, but we feel pretty good about it. Me and Friedman are bouncing these things off each other. I bounce stuff over to Ian. We've got a model that's built that goes back and looks at very similar situations to try to help at least give us a starting point on these players. But then once that's done, what the next step in the model is it accounts for all the things we can't, which is just weird stuff happens when an NFL season starts. It could come down to losing carries to another teammate. It could come down to an injury. It could come down to you being hyper efficient or even getting more work than what we think. And so when you look at Jeanty, number 1, his median projection in a PPR league, Ian, is 16.4 fantasy points per game. His floor is 12.8. He would have to run really bad for that. But the ceiling in year 1 is 22.8. I mean, we were talking Saquon Barkley, CMC, Jahmyr Gibbs when he doesn't have to deal with David Montgomery. That's the level we're talking about here with Ashton Jeanty. So I think we absolutely want to be in. I think if people want to take Jahmyr Gibbs over him just because they've seen it for a couple of years, I think it's fine. But I do feel comfortable enough with this particular prospect to go ahead and project him ahead of Gibbs like Ian already has done, just because, it's a near lock for 65% of the carries. Gibbs, the lock we can give him for percentage of carries is like 45. Now, could they look at last year and be like, we really like David Montgomery, but look what Jahmyr Gibbs did down the stretch, and they could bump it up to 55 or 60. They could give Jahmyr Gibbs more, and if that happens, he's going to probably outscore Jeanty. But I'm looking at this as baseline realistic. I think Jeanty has the better chance to be the bell cow back out of the gate than what we have with Jahmyr Gibbs, and that is why he is deserving of being the running back 3 after Saquon Barkley and Bijan Robinson are off the board.
Obviously very high in our overall ranks as well. He comes in as my 6th player overall. Dwayne's is 8, where, again, it's really a situation where Saquon, Bijan, okay, go ahead and rank him over him. Gibbs, I do think, has a case over Jeanty, same tier, 3 versus 4. I'm not going to call you crazy, if you do want to go in that direction. But the wide receivers, man, Chase, Jefferson, CD, I just think there's so many targets on the table for guys who we know can boom at any occasion. Yes, I am taking them over Jeanty. Puka Nacua is someone where before the Devontae Adams move, I would have had Jeanty as well. As things stand right now, I will be going with Jeanty. So again, top 8 player for Dwayne and myself. I am just a tad higher, but it's really what we've seen more times than not from top 10 picks over the past 15 years. Todd Gurley finished as the RB2 on a per game basis. Zeke was the RB3, Saquon RB4, Leonard Fournette RB6. Even Trent Richardson, before things went south, finished as the RB7 at least during year 1. So the only, quote unquote bust, Dwayne, were Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson, who finished as, RB20, not terrible, but not what you drafted them for. CMC still had Jonathan Stewart, also had Cam Newton, and just wasn't getting the featured role we maybe expected. Bijan got, Arthur Smith with Tyler Algier. getting a bunch of touches there. So I struggle to really see a scenario for Jeanty unfolding like it did for Bijan. I just don't think Raheem Mostert or Zamir White are going to be making a noticeable impact. Maybe the CMC lack of efficiency could be hurting Jeanty, but really, man, again, you mentioned the floor. I just have a very hard time believing Jeanty is going to finish anything worse than, say, the RB10, RB12. And accordingly, man, right now, underdog ADP, RB4, I think he's going to be the RB3 ahead of Gibbs soon, and I think he deserves it.
I do think that's where he ultimately ends up landing once everybody thinks through it all. So I think you're looking at Jeanty as probably a top 6 pick in fantasy drafts. And that's going to be sticker shock to some of you. But I think people have gotten more and more used to that here over the last few years, where people have gotten so much more aggressive with rookies. I remember, Ian, when I first started drafting, and this is going to age me, going back in fantasy, rookies were always my cheat code. The year Adrian Peterson was a rookie running back, I took him in round 3 of the draft. I probably could have waited till round 5, but I just wanted to make sure that I had him. The year that Ricky Williams came out, now he ended up being a bust, but the year that the Saints traded away all the picks for Ricky, I made him the pick at the end of round 2. Those things don't happen anymore, right? Now a player like Ricky Williams is Ashton Jeanty, and you're going to have to pay a mid-round 1 pick on this guy. So the times have definitely changed, but I do think people are getting more used to it. So don't let that sticker shock for Jeanty really worry you. I will say this. If someone is sitting there, Ian, and they've got this tier of Puka Nacua, Jahmyr Gibbs, Ashton Jeanty, let's say CeeDee Lamb is floating into that, and Justin Jefferson, I won't blame anyone if they want to take one of those other players, because bottom line is all really good players, and a lot of this will come down to who stays healthy, right? At the end of the year, we're going to look up and be like, man, whatever, Puka Nacua was the pick. He stayed healthy out of those 5 guys the most, and he scored the most fantasy points. So just remember, guys, we do tier players for a reason. We are literally saying, hey, depending on the way you want to build your team and the way you think the rest of the draft is going to go, it's okay to take any of these guys. Now, we do rank them for you because we do have slight leanings, but inside that tier, you really can go the direction that you want.
Now, with Jeanty landing on the Raiders again, that was one of the few teams out there where we just said, man, if he goes here, easy, undisputed workhorse RB1, because a lot of other teams did still have some good running backs. The other really good landing spot that we knew existed was in the Denver with the Broncos. And yes, Mr. RJ Harvey ended up getting round 2 draft capital to go ahead and fill that role. So Sean Payton apparently found his new RB. And yes, Dwayne, we have seen situations in the past. You go back to the early 2010s where he used a first-round pick on Mark Ingram, and we still saw guys like Pierre Thomas and Darren Sproles and even Reggie Bush still finding a way to steal away some of that, work. But in this case, man, only Jaleel McLaughlin, only Audric Estimated looking like competition for RJ Harvey. So really does seem like the most pure run out possible for Harvey. Accordingly, I have him as my RB25 right now going into the year. You're just a tad lower than me, but man, we were discussing before the show, really does seem like it's going to be hard for this guy to bust in a meaningful way. Big if he can get that ever fantasy friendly pass down role.
Yeah, and rookie wise, I'm RB10, Waz is 12, Friedman's 14. I'm not sure where you are on that.
Not
you got
overall
10 too. So
he's our RB5.
Yeah, overall 10. Yeah. Sorry, that's overall ranks in Dynasty. So I think we are all on the same page there. And what people have to remember is you see pick 60. And you're like, oh my God, that's not that great compared to other players. Remember, for running backs, they get pushed down in the draft. So pick 60 for a running back is essentially like a wide receiver going at pick 22. Where RJ Harvey went is the equivalent of Matthew Golden being a late round 2 pick. That's the way the math works out on that. So make sure you kind of recalibrate when you see these landing spots and some of the draft capital. So this is actually really bullish for Harvey. And when you look at him, Ian, for the season long ranks and where I've got Harvey right now, I've got him running back 31. You're slightly higher than me at 27, but same range. Friedman being a wet blanket. We got to get Friedman on the show. He's got him at a 40. Come on, Friedman. Waz is right there at 33. So in alignment with us. I'm with you. Sean Payton in the past has done enough as far as doing some of these silly rotations that I didn't give everything to Harvey. I do think Harvey's the best back on this team, like because he does the things that Sean Payton really wants when you go back and you look at guys. Now, he's not on the level of an Alvin Kamara, guys. He's not on the level of a Darren Sproles, but he does give you a lot of that explosiveness. So as I was really writing up the article yesterday, which folks can see over on fantasylife.com for free, looking at the rookie rankings, this is what I had to say really quickly about Harvey. He offers a unique blend of elusiveness and explosiveness, 31% tackles forced rate, that's 73rd percentile all time going back to 2018 in the model. And Ian, he busted loose for 10 plus yards on 21% of his attempts. That's 75th percentile. So we're talking about a guy with a good speed score, very explosive playmaker. I do think the biggest question is, and it's kind of weird because I see on social media all these assumptions that he's going to turn into this elite wide receiver. I think it's in his range of outcomes, but he did not necessarily at the collegiate level show to be like this hyper plus wide receiver. Now, having said that, Sean Payton's a mastermind, Ian. We were talking about it before the show. Like, you don't have to be a downfield, beat a guy on a Texas route or angle route. He'll use you like that if you're a Kamara or a Sproles. But, man, you can be a Javonte Williams, a Jaleel McLaughlin, and he will design all this stuff for you behind the line of scrimmage. Like, all of his running backs end up in like this 22 to 25% targets per route run. So it may not even really matter for Harvey. As long as Sean Payton has that mindset towards him and his goal is to like get this player in space and let him make these big plays, I think it's really good. So when you look at the supermodel hit rates for a player like this, Ian, 69% of them went on to be top 36 guys in their first 3 years. 45% of them, so almost half of them, became top 24 performers. And I'm bullish. I think there's a real shot that he's a top 24 running back this year because it's Audric Estime, it's Jaleel McLaughlin, and I'm not completely dismissing Estime in the projection process. Like, I gave him some of the carries, like as the big bodied back. I did give Harvey the lead. And so open to your thoughts here. I gave him 44% of the rushing attempts, but I gave 36% to Estime. Like as the guy coming in as the bigger player, and they have kind of this combo. Sean Payton has done that over time. But I did go ahead and lean into Harvey as the guy that would be on the field more on passing downs and kind of gave him that treatment. I gave him a 22% targets per route run. So once you put it all together, man, it's a really, really good proposition for fantasy drafters this year. A 10.5 median projection, but a ceiling of 16.1. That is only behind Omarion Hampton and Quinshon Judkins. And really, he and Judkins are tied. Judkins is at a 16.3. I think you could argue that if Harvey's run out was pure, like I'm pretty much projecting a pure run out for Judkins. I've got him taking over the early down work, giving away some of the passing down stuff. But with Harvey, if he did get to like 55% of the rushing attempts, like 45, 50% of the route participation, this ceiling number that I had would actually probably move past Omarion Hampton, who we have as our running back 2 right now. So ton of upside for Harvey. A little murky though, because we don't know for sure how Sean Payton's going to handle the backfield workload splits.
Again, don't even necessarily need Harvey to be as polished as Kamara or Sproles as a receiver, because last year, Javonte freaking Williams had 70 targets, and it's like none of you even care. So again, it's just wild to me because we go back with Payton, and obviously last 2 years haven't been great, but man, 17 years now as a head coach, his average RB1 finish has been RB12, the median's been RB8, and until these last 2 years, 14 of 15 seasons had him with a running back finishing as RB18 or better. So again, for the time being, I am the highest on Harvey of the Fantasy Life crew, but I have a feeling, Dwain, this ADP is going to be on the up and up. Right now, sitting as the RB24 over underdog. I'm going to say by September, I think we get some good news, and it's going to be up there as high as RB17. All right, we're going to be looking at Joe Mixon, Omarion Hampton, guys in that teens. I could see it again staying, but man, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, David Montgomery, they probably should be projected for more than RJ Harvey, okay? But man, when you just start getting into the PFF ranking second-ranked O-line, all those potential targets, and Harvey, I mean, I know we're saying like, hey, maybe he gets 70 targets, 200 carries, like that's great. There is the possibility he just takes over the whole freaking backfield, which again would actually leave him looking more like an RB1 as opposed to that mid-tier RB2. So I'm saying RB17 in September. What say you?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I don't think he would pass Hampton. So where we ultimately end up with Hampton, like I would say that's probably like his like the breaking point. I've got Hampton at running back 17 right now, so I'm slightly higher than the rest of you guys. Of course, Friedman going wet blanket at 27. We're going to get Friedman on the show to defend all these wet blanket takes. Waz is at 24. I think yours is at 21, Ian, but I know you were saying you were having some technical difficulties in getting loaded, so you may be slightly higher than that on Hampton, but you and I are really close. So yeah, I don't think I see a scenario where I have him pass Hampton, but I definitely see a scenario where he could be the running back 3 as far as rookies, right? That we're taking off the draft board. So I would say low end running back 20s would be around where he could get to. Now, I will say, like, there's these certain circumstances. If he were to just blow up in preseason and have 2 long runs, well, we know what that does. that could move him like the RB 15 because people get overexcited. But I think low end running back 2 is probably about where Harvey shakes out, assuming that the news from training camp is positive and that he is at least the lead in a committee.
Mention Omarion Hampton as someone who we do have ranked ahead of RJ Harvey, and that is a fact. My RB20, Dwain's RB17, both of our rookie RB2s. I was, somewhat surprised, Dwain, to see that you actually have Hampton, though, as your overall second player in Dynasty as well. He actually comes in as my 4th. I would take the receivers and Tetairoa McMillan and Travis Hunter before I get to the second running back. So again, I don't necessarily disagree with Hampton standing among all the rookie running backs. Getting that first round draft capital is awesome. Love the long-term fit, especially with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman and company. But for me, just in Dynasty, if it is close between a running back and a wide receiver, I like to side with the pass catcher. And I do think in T-Mac and Hunter's case, we have 2 potential long-term wide receiver 1s, and the position just tends to last a bit longer than running back. So thoughts on making Hampton, Dwain, your second overall pick in rookie drafts?
Yeah, it really just comes down to the way the running back profiles work versus wide receivers. With wide receivers, there's more variance in the range of their outcomes. Where I would agree with you, wide receivers typically play long. If really good ones get a 3rd contract, that almost never happens for a running back unless you're just an absolute stud. So I feel like you get more tread on the tire with those guys. I do think that Tetairoa McMillan and Travis Hunter are very deserving. And by the way, they're all in the same tier together, guys. So it does ultimately come down to your roster construction, your preference. And so when I create these tiers, I really do make them in a way where you can take any one of these guys. I did rank Hampton as the number 2 prospect. And the main reason for that, Ian, is just the hit rates on the running backs and how strong they are. 73% of Omarion Hampton's comps went on to be top 12 running backs in their first 3 years. 27% reached a top 6 finish, and 91% were top 24. So he's almost foolproof. Like, you're getting a running back 2, you're probably getting a running back 1, and there's a chance you're getting a top 6 running back. So when we look at Tetairoa McMillan, we look at those same ranges of outcomes. 100% chance you're getting a wide receiver 3, but not a wide receiver 2. 80% chance, though, on wide receiver 2, so pretty close. But when you look at what he did in the top 12 finishes, 30% versus 76% for Hampton in that top 12. So I just slightly lean towards the higher hit rates for the running backs. Again, I do think it's okay if you want to take McMillan over him. I do think it's okay if you want to take Travis Hunter over him as well. Travis Hunter had really similar hit rates to what we just talked about with Tetairoa McMillan, so I won't exhaust it. But ultimately, it just came down to, I've been working on the supermodel for 3 or 4 years, and I'm like, if there's going to be this actionable takeaways from it, like, I should use them, in my ranks. And so I did give Omarion Hampton the slight nod. Again, I would not, like, if someone took Tetairoa McMillan over him, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, like, you're an idiot. I have them all in the same tier together.
Now looking more at 2025 specifically, we did actually have Jim Harbaugh talking after the draft saying he considers both Najee Harris and Hampton to be co-starters. Similar sentiment to what he was saying with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins last season, and we did to an extent see that. Dobbins obviously emerged as the clear-cut RB1, but had some earlier season injuries to Gus Bus. But I will say, Dwain, overall, in Harbaugh's history, all right, you look at all the 49ers teams. I mean, Frank Gore, clear-cut, easy RB1 on those teams. They never had a second running back threatening his workload. And again, last year, J.K. Dobbins with 227 touches in 13 games did pull away, especially, down the stretch. So Greg Roman had things a bit more split up in Baltimore. Are you buying that Najee and Hampton are going to be splitting things? Because, again, that seems to be what they're telling us right now, albeit if we had to guess who's going to be fully taken over, that would be Hampton. And I think it's for that reason that right now he is going off the board an underdog as the RB 14 overall.
Yeah, 14 overall, and I've got him at 17, I think is a smidge rich. I do think you're going to get the late season breakout from Hampton, which can win you your fantasy league. And this is where you got to know, the platforms we're talking about. Underdog drafters are 100% about upside. So they're going to push a player like Hampton up the board. If you're in a regular draft with your buddies, you're going to be able to get Hampton later than that. Right. Mm-hmm. And you're going to want to put together a plan once you take him, because those underdog drafters are right. He can be helping you win your league by the time the season is coming to a close and you need those points in your championship game. But I will say you're going to want to hedge a little bit later in the draft and potentially circle back around to grab some sort of a running back that maybe it's an old dude nobody wants. Alvin Kamara, James Conner, there's other names that are even lower than that are okay, I can play these guys early in the season. And ultimately then Omarion Hampton takes over and turns into this gangbusters player for me at the end of the year. Honestly, if you're playing best ball, you also need a similar strategy for Omarion Hampton. But I will close with saying, I do think it will be a committee to start the season. If I had to put odds on it, I think it will be a committee. I think Najee Harris probably gets more of the passing down roles. I think a slight edge to Hampton in the rushing attempts. But having said that, I do think there's a range of outcomes where Hampton just takes over day one. I think it's kind of going to be up to him. How good does he look in training camp? Is he handling all of his other responsibilities? That's not just running the ball that the coaches care about. I do think there's this chance. What's really interesting is if you go back and look at the history of the supermodel, Ian, as prospects. Now, we've got more data on Najee Harris at this point, but we had Hampton rate one spot lower than Najee Harris in the rookie supermodel. Najee Harris was an 80 and Hampton was a 79. So as prospects, they're actually kind of close. I do know that Hampton's the more explosive player of the two. So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. But yeah, I think with Hampton, I don't see him pushing higher than he's going though now. If we're asking the ADP question, how high does he get? The only way Hampton pushes higher than he does now is Najee gets hurt in preseason, knock on wood. We never want players to get hurt. But if Najee was suddenly out for 8 games, then Hampton's going to climb. Otherwise, I honestly feel like there's a little room for Hampton to slide down. I don't think he's going to be the running back 14 on Underdog. A very aggressive platform. I think he comes down from there. Not a ton, but probably 3 or 4 spots, maybe to where I've got him right now in the ranks, which is QB 17 or running back 17.
I'm guessing RB 18, but yeah, I love that shot on Najee Harris. He was special at Alabama, guys. I'm old enough to remember, again, him hurdling that Notre Dame dude and then taking off for 60. I mean, yeah, Steelers, what wasn't the best situation out there, and he certainly didn't make the most of it, but again, could be maybe a bit more evenly split than the Hampton Truthers would want, at least early on in the season. Let's move along to Browns running back Quinshon Judkins, staying in the great state of Ohio after he helped lead the Buckeyes to that national championship. Just want to keep on repeating that as much as I can throughout this year. But Dwain, you have him as your RB24. I'm a little bit lower, RB28, not because I necessarily doubt the player. Vicious stiff arms. The guy's got, enough speed. And when you kind of combine that with the 220-pound frame, you can see the potential for a 3-down workload. That's something that Andrew Berry even noted in some of their, post-draft interviews. But man, it's just everything after that, man. I don't love this offensive line that, yes, was banged up last year, but I think going into the year, we weren't exactly saying top 5 unit, especially after Callahan went to go join his son in Tennessee. And then also we have, still some players like Jerome Ford. They drafted Dylan Sampson, enough guys who maybe could continue to factor in committee, which, let's face it, Stefanski has leaned on over the years. And then the scoring upside, I mean, if we had to guess who's going to be scoring the fewest points in the National Football League this year, Cleveland is very well going to be on that short list. So with Judkins, man, it's fine, but I feel like this is mostly a volume play. How confident are you in him getting that said volume?
Yeah, I do think it's a volume play, but I think you're in trouble here because Matthew Friedman actually has him ranked ahead of me. Mr. Wet Blanket has Quinshon Judkins at running back 22. So that's all I need to say. You're going to have to adjust your ranks and you're just going to have to live with it. When I look at Judkins, I think everything you said is very fair, but This is a guy that went very early in round 2, a very special runner in college. When you look at his PFF rush grade and things like that, like he had one of the best percentiles ever. So I think he immediately takes over a very large role for the Browns, which is worth something to me, because I do think there's a lot of these other rookies behind Quinshon Judkins where we're not quite sure what their role is going to be. Now, that doesn't mean we don't lean into variance. Like, I think Travion Henderson, if he hit the perfect run out, is going to probably give you more upside than Quinshon Judkins this year. But I think there is definitely a value in knowing that Quinshon should come in and immediately take over the early down work. And who's to say he doesn't get some of the third and fourth down work as well? Like, it's a potential that's there. We're not projecting it today. And the other thing here is, like, Stefanski has actually been a plus coordinator. And I really do expect some changes to the Browns offense. This is something I was talking about with Friedman before the show. We visit and we talk about these teams. The Browns were one we brought up. And I was like, look at this, Friedman. Like, I really do believe they're going to throw the ball a little bit more. They invested in 2 running backs in the draft. Yes, the offensive line not quite as good as what it used to be, but I think it could still end up being middle of the pack. And if you go back to Stefanski and look at what he did before the last 3 years, when he had Deshaun Watson and decided he was going to change this whole scheme to really be a pass-heavy team, they were a more conservative team. They were a team that wanted to run the ball more. I think they do actually have the defense to still play defense, play more ball control. So I'm seeing an offense that there's a sliver of hope that it's actually going to be better, because they're going to shift gears and now really turn into this team where they want to lean more into their run game, use play action, different things like that to try to create efficiency in the passing game, which makes a lot of sense when your starting quarterback right now is Joe Flacco. Do you really want to drop back 40 times per game with Joe Flacco? I mean, it's admirable what the dude's doing at the age that he's at, but I feel like what you want to do is center him in an offense where you can give him the opportunity to live through efficiency and not through volume. So I'm slightly more bullish. I can't ignore all the factors that you laid out for Cleveland, but I think looking at, like, the fingerprints of the offseason, all the different moves they made, I think they want to make a change in the way they want to run their team, and that means more rushing attempts. And I think Quinshon Judkins leads the way, and I just really do think he's a pretty special player. So I think even if they're on a losing team that wins like 6 or 7 games, I think they could have the resolve to stick with the run game, which could still mean like 8 or 9 rushing touchdowns for this guy and some big plays. So I want to be a little ahead of the market right now on Quinshon Judkins. We'll see how high it ultimately goes, but that's where I feel with him. And obviously in Dynasty, like, he's my running back 5. I love him in Dynasty.
As things stand right now, again, we have this kind of veteran old tier guys like Alvin Kamara, James Conner, and then David Montgomery. After that, man, it's a situation where I think you could probably argue the RB23 and the RB30, have the same potential upside. You mentioned Travion Henderson. We're going to see Caleb Johnson in there, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, Tyron Tracy, DeAndre Swift, as long as the Bears continue to not really do anything at the position. Maybe guys like RJ Harvey, and even Isaiah Pacheco as well. So it's going to be tough, exactly figuring out that range. Luckily, we have many months ahead to do that this summer, but right now, sitting on underdog, the RB21 still, I think, a little bit impacted from potentially what we were seeing in the pre-draft scene. But Dwain, I'm going to have him coming in as the RB23, basically right behind those veterans who, again, are in, I think we can say, better offenses, at least in terms of Connor and Monty. Maybe not so much for Kamara, but my God, you see that contract. We know it's Alvin Kamara. I will still have him ahead of Judkins. So I'm going to say Judkins finishes as the RB23 in September. What say you?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with 24 where I've got him. And it's essentially looking at the players around him, like what you were doing. Like, I'm keeping him over Pollard. I'm going to keep him slightly over Brian Robinson Jr., although I know there's an argument there for B-Rob being in that same tier. I'm going to keep him ahead of Pacheco, ahead of Tyrone Tracy. I have no issues with those. And then when I look ahead of him, like, I really do feel like there's a tier here with David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Quinshon Judkins, James Conner. Like, I feel like they're all really close, and I could just see people deciding, do they want to lean to the veteran or do they want to lean more to the younger player? I think where the tier cut happens is Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is the guy that I'm still going to take over Judkins. And just the reason why is because he's still such an elite passing down back. I know that the Saints offense got completely derailed, guys. Every quarterback got hurt. The backups quarterback. They were asking Ian Hartitz to play quarterback for this team last year. The receivers all got hurt too, man. Chris Olave was out. By midseason, Rashid Shaheed was gone. Like, defenses didn't have anything to worry about with this offense. And ultimately, Kamara ended up breaking down at the end of the season. But I do think it's interesting, Ian, that how we forget how good Alvin Kamara was last year to begin the season. And I get it. He's older. But through the first 10 weeks, the dude was averaging 20.7 fantasy points per game. He had a 9.4 utilization score. He was the third best running back in fantasy. 10 games in. It's not like, oh, Kamara was fresh at the beginning of the year. And he 10 games in, and then ultimately an injury derailed his season. And he was doing this crap. We're already at the point in the season where Derek Carr was in and out of the lineup, and you had all these other injuries. So I get it. Kamara's an older back, but for me, he's just earned the respect. I mean, the guy at that point had a 24% target share, a 30% targets per route run. And when you're doing that, that's just too good. The one caveat I will give is for the Saints, we got to watch the quarterback situation. I'm hoping Derek Carr's shoulder is okay. If you tell me Tyler Shuck's going to be starting under center week 1, that's probably going to make me move Kamara down a little bit. For right now, I'm going to hold out hope that the whole thing with Carr's shoulder is going to ultimately be okay, and he'll be ready by the time the season's ready to start.
Again, even in these lesser post-Breeze, post-Peyton Saints offenses, Kamara back-to-back top 5 finishes in PPR points per game and can get him for the lowly prices like the RB 18. What a time to be alive. But guys, much more analysis ready to go here. Moving on to some wide receivers right after this quick word from our friends over at Bud Light.
Hey, you know you're not actually allowed to drink in a beer commercial?
Since when?
You gotta wait till it's done. Oh,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
With all due respect to Travion Henderson and Caleb Johnson, you can find their ranks, both rookie and in regular redraft formats, over at fantasylife.com. But want to touch on some of these wide receivers, specifically one who is going to be one of the more peculiar guys to rank, Dwain. And it's not a question about his talent, just more so everything else. Of course, I'm talking about number 2 overall pick, Travis Hunter. Now the Jaguars 1B, number 1 overall, best overall playmaker, whatever you want to call him. So currently I have him as my wide receiver 34, rookie wide receiver 2. You're on the same page with me in Dynasty Land. Yes, we do prefer T-Mac, but you are a bit more optimistic in redraft. Have him up there at wide receiver 24. So I hear you, Dwain. He's very talented and everything, but when you're going next to guys like Devonta Smith, Jameson Williams, Jalen Waddle, I mean, I'm not so sure that Travis Hunter's talent is just that much better than them when we can reasonably look at those guys and say, man, they might get an extra 30 plus targets if things run right. So again, I see where things can run right for Hunter, but how do you think he's going to be able to check all those boxes and accordingly emerge as a top 24 player?
Yeah, look, it's a big bet on talent, but I also just went ahead and put Travis Hunter where I think he's going to be going. So sorry, surprise. I'm answering where I think he's going to go in ADP by the time everything is done. Because, dude, you guys know what's going to happen. We are going to hear this stuff in training camp. Travis Hunter shining on offense. He's out there playing 80% of the reps. Yeah, he's learning the defense. Liam Cohen's going to be doing his whole Duval, talking all weird crap. People are just going to get super excited about it, and so I just went ahead and pushed him up to like the ceiling of where I think I would draft him. Now, I might draft him even a little bit higher. I could get into that low end wide receiver 2 range because I definitely want exposure to this player. So that's why I put him at 24. The assumptions that go into this for me, the Jaguars came out and already said that they want to primarily use him on offense. So I gave him a 75% route participation. But I also think, Ian, when he's on the field, like they could be doing a lot to make sure they're manufacturing some easy touches for him. Like if you go back and think about some of the low route participation guys over history that were really talented players, and ultimately like they get these astronomical target per route run rates. Now, I didn't do that with Hunter. I gave him a 23%. I started off as a 21%, but that was enough alone to push him into that mid-range wide receiver 3 conversation. And then when you just want to bake in a little bit more upside for his ultimate talent and the fact that we don't know for sure that the Jaguars won't just play him 85% of the time on offense. And if that happens and he has a 22, 23% targets per route run, now we're actually going to end up being a little low. So I kind of tried to like middle like those two scenarios. And just to give you real quick on Travis Hunter, what's interesting, Tet McMillan, obviously a guy that we know, Ian, is going to come in and step into an immediate role for the Panthers. We'll talk about him in a second. But when I looked at the ceiling and the floors for these players, again, limiting what we're going to get from Travis Hunter as far as like his route participation, they came in really close. So Tet, obviously the floor was higher than ceiling, higher than Travis Hunter's floor at 9.4 fantasy points per game. Tet's median also better. Median projection for Travis Hunter, 12.2 fantasy points per game. But man, that ceiling, 18.4 fantasy points per game. And the beauty of the ceiling projections, the way we built them, was really this whole idea of variance of where we, at the end of the day, as much as we try, we really don't ultimately know what coaches are going to do. And if they decided to unleash the talent that the player possesses, what could happen? 18 fantasy points per game is in range for the ceiling. I'm not saying that's likely. That's based on a 90th percentile outcome for Travis Hunter. So we're getting up there, 90th percentile, just to kind of like put a caveat on it. This is not like one standard deviation away from his median. We put it out there at that 90th percentile. So we are aiming for the ceilings here. So knowing that, like, I think Travis Hunter is totally in play. I mean, you could still get that median projection of 12.2, Ian, which is going to be like, oh, I drafted a wide receiver 2 that's really performing more like a low-end wide receiver 3. That's totally in the range of outcomes. But when it comes to fantasy, man, I just want to be betting on the ceilings. And here's the thing, just real quick. When we look at those names that are around Travis Hunter, okay, I think the other one that goes in the same bucket as him is Rashee Rice, which we're hearing reports is going to be ready for training camp. You know how those reports go, guys. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's official, but, you know, we're early. We did this with Jonathan Brooks. Going to be ready for training camp. Didn't play till week 12. So now Rice's injury was obviously a little bit earlier. But, like, when I look at Devonta Smith, really like him as a player. But I've seen it multiple years now, and I know that A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert are very involved, and the Eagles want to run the ball. So do I really mind taking Travis Hunter over him? That doesn't bother me. Jameson Williams, a player I really like, but most everything's predicated on big plays. Like the offense still runs through Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I think I'm actually okay with that. DK Metcalf, I have him above him. I just think we have quarterback questions for DK Metcalf. You know, we got Arthur Smith questions for DK Metcalf. So I kind of moved him also in a range where I'm like, I could see it. I'm not going to lose sleep at night by taking Travis Hunter over Devonta Smith, Jameson Williams, DK Metcalf. I like those players, but I'm not going to lose sleep. But where I stopped it at was like once you got to like Tet McMillan, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy, Marvin Harrison Jr., like I stopped it there, but I'll be honest, like you could push him up another 4 or 5 spots, like if he keeps getting higher in ADP, to where I built a little bit of cushion that I would be willing to take him over some of those names as well. But where I think it ends is you get to wide receiver 18 at Mike Evans. I mean, I can't do it. Devontae Adams, can't get there. Terry McLaurin, I'm probably not doing it. T. Higgins, I'm not drafting him over him. So again, like a little bit of projection art, but also then when I made the rankings, looking at the names around him and saying, okay, where can I sleep at night? I don't think I'm making this massive mistake if I take Travis Hunter over these players.
Only 12 rookie wide receivers have posted top 24 numbers over the past 10 years. That said, 5 in the last 2 alone and 9 in the last 5. So perhaps a changing of the guard at that position. Certainly college offense is getting quite a bit better here at throwing the football as we enter 2025. Last one, Dwain, going to need to pick up the pace just a bit, but with Tet McMillan, both of us actually seemingly on the same page. He's my wide receiver 18. You're wide receiver 19. It's funny. I did these kind of quick, rapid kind of reactions to all the draft picks. You guys can read them over at fantasylife.com. And when I originally wrote T-Mac's, spot, I had him kind of more as that wide receiver 24 next to Marvin Harrison Jr. And I even ended my blurb with, but this honestly feels low as I start going through it and seeing what his target upside is and how good Bryce Young was playing down the stretch. And ended up, even though I think it's a bad comp, putting the guy right next to Mike Evans, mostly because, man, I think we're looking at a guy here that could have 150 plus targets and we wouldn't even blink.
Yep. Yeah, Tet McMillan right now I have as wide receiver 19 overall in our redraft rankings. I could see that climbing all the way to T. Higgins at wide receiver 13, Jackson Smith and Jigba wide receiver 12. I think that's how high he could push if he's having a really good training camp. So I absolutely love Tet McMillan. And I know we're already running over. So folks, you can go check out tomorrow. There will be an article up that goes through the range of outcomes for all these players. But I think there's some real positive things you're going to want to look at for Matthew Golden. His profile came out really good. Emeka Egbuka. The fact that he landed on the Bucks, I know there's concerns, but man, the ceiling case for Egbuka is still really strong. And I'm probably going to end up drafting him a lot because I think he's going to really fall because people are just going to assume, it's going to be Chris Godwin, it's going to be Mike Evans, but there's quite a few paths to him hitting a ceiling. Also was surprised with what I saw from Luther Burden and one more bear, Colston Loveland. Even though we're dealing with Cole Kmet, I really like the range of outcomes on him. So folks can check that out over on fantasylife.com tomorrow.
All the ranks you guys want, especially Loveland. I was bragging and Dwain earlier. 107 and a tight end premium. Good job by me. How about that? Keep on drafting that guy again. Might be rough in year one with Cole Kmet, but future certainly looking bright for that bear and the team as a whole. So future's hopefully looking bright for you as well. And if not, go out there and freaking change it, man. It's a great day to be great as always. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.